is joining me. He's Ed Ubong, who is the Managing Director, Shell Nigeria Gas Limited. He's also the President, Nigerian Gas Association. Mr. Ubong, are you there? And good morning to you.
Good morning, Nancy. Can you hear me clearly?
Mr. Ubong, can you hear me?
Good morning, Nancy. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you clearly, and your picture is coming up now. But I need to see a live. I need to see a live, Mr. Ubong. Okay, good. Welcome to you, and thank you for joining us.
Excellent.
Okay, let's get started. Gas. This administration has said that 2020 to 2030 is a decade of gas. What is your association saying about it, and how do you guys feel about it before we delve into some other issues properly?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I think it's all clear from the Nigerian Gas Association perspective that the declaration of a decade of gas, it's a good initiative by the federal government working with key stakeholders in the country. Overall, now it's getting to a year since the president declared a decade of gas. We've seen significant movement in 2021 with the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act, the privatization of NNPC, which has been incorporated. We've seen early movement around pricing on gas to power, which the minister had put out a gazette, which sort of reduced the gas supply to the power sector. Overall, I think it's been a year where there have been a lot of movement from both the government side and the critical stakeholder side around getting ready for this decade of gas. And I think we're now sort of in that space where the key regulatory space is almost stable with new regulatory agencies, the midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory authority now in place. We then need to begin to sort of implement some of the regulatory frameworks that would allow this sector to move very aggressively. It's 10 years, but it's a 10-year period where, from the association perspective, we want to see domestic gas supply grow from where we are today, where Nigeria is consuming, or Nigeria is sort of producing about 5 BCF a day to about 10, 15 BCF a day come 2030. Yeah, but it's a lot of work, a lot of pronouncements from the president, the minister, NNPC, and all of that critical stakeholders. A lot of work still to be done to get us to where we need to be, which is on one hand, from the domestic gas to power. We want gas to power more power plants and provide us more reliable electricity in country on a 24/7 basis. We want more gas to get into the cooking space so that we can also have cooking gas that is affordable and available. We want more gas to industries because it is industries that will create employment and manufacture goods and services that most Nigerians consume. These are some of the key areas we want to see a lot more results as the year and decade progresses.
Okay, Mr. Ubong, I would want you to share some perspective. So give me exactly in detail, if you can, what is our gas capacity, gas production capacity? Because I know that even among analysts, there's this, mismatch. Some analysts will say that we don't produce enough, that we have importation, closes the gap. How much gas do we really produce locally?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy, for the question. So if we're asking the question, how much gas comes out of Nigeria's reserves on a daily basis, then we're talking of close to about 7 BCF a day. If we're then talking about part of that, then sort of goes to the export market, which is today that export market is mainly via NLNG. Today, how much gas is circulating within Nigeria on an annual basis? We're thinking about 1.2 BCF a day of gas is then sort of being actually consumed, and then that sort of needs to grow. Of course, when you sort of then pick up the LNG exported volumes, part of that, of course, goes to markets in Europe and other customers that have long-term contracts. But the LNG, of course, is a key supplier of LPG, a combination of butane and propane, which is, of course, then sort of brought back in as cooking gas. Today in Nigeria, the only source of cooking gas is via LPG. Even though we have pipeline gas circulating in Nigeria, Unfortunately, we have not yet begun to pipe gas to homes, which sort of creates another supply gap. So we're basically looking at significant volumes of LPG coming in. LNG alone has not met that demand. So LNG provides a significant portion, 40, 50%. Marketers also need to sort of then import to sort of close the gap, because in the LPG market, demand is significantly above supply. And that's where you're seeing some of the price challenges that seems to be pointing northwards.
Okay, since you talked about NLNG, and let me quickly go to NLNG, because I guess the news, you would have gotten the news that NLNG says that it would supply the Nigerian market 100% capacity, and now to boost the shortfall. You know that in 2021 we had skyrocketing gas prices. At the beginning of the show, I said, for example, I remember we used to buy 12.5 kg of gas, I think in 2019, 2020 at about 3,000 or 3.5. The higher version was about 7,000. Now, if you want to buy that 12.5 kg, you'll be spending close to 10, 11,000. So the news from NLNG, is it good news? And it says it's going to be supplying, I think, about 450,000 metric tons into the market.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I mean, it's excellent commitment from the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Limited, and I think it's one of those critical stakeholders who has continued to stay behind Nigeria's quest to monetize its gas resources. So that commitment has been made, and I think it's excellent. The board sort of approved it, and you sort of saw that in the papers and also in the media. The next step, of course, is that we then need to go into that space where all the critical stakeholders in the LPG value chain work. What does that mean? How much butane will come in? How much propane will come in? And how will we translate that supply increase to mitigating the higher prices that we see today? A key bit of course, is that supply bit it assures the market you're getting more volumes, and I think that's what LNG is saying. Would that still meet 100% of Nigeria's LPG demand? Unfortunately, the answer is no, until maybe projects like Train 7 come up and add more volumes to the NLNG train. The other bit, of course, that the government and other key stakeholders need to look at as we battle this price inflation is what other additional unnecessary taxes exist on that LPG supply chain that can be removed to sort of enable gas to get to the people in the villages and on the streets at the lower prices. We must view gas not as a source of rent, but as an enabler for Nigeria's development. And I think that's where the key bit now we sort of need to focus on. Yes, there's going to be increased supply, but we need to look at the value chain and ask, are we still trying to generate revenues from gas by taxing the various parts of the value chain? And if that is the case, then we need to remove those taxes to ensure that the right incentives are in place to ensure that the cooking gas gets to the end user at an affordable price. We also need to ensure that apart from cooking gas only coming in from importation, we also need to begin, like in every other country, discuss or work how we can pipe more gas to homes, because we already have gas pipelines in country with gas being taken to industries. So we need to then support entrepreneurs and investors to be able to take gas, which is already available, moving within the country, and then pipe it into homes like what happens in every part of the world. There is also a third bit around ensuring and supporting small indigenous companies who are flaring gas to be able to monetize some of those gas volumes. And once that is being processed, more LPG usually will be able to get into the market. So overall, Nancy, it's going to be a multi-pronged approach. LNG has fired the first shot in the right direction. We are committed to take 100% of our LPG production into this market. Other players in the sector, including various regulatory bodies, the FIRS, the Ministry of Finance, also then need to begin to sit together with stakeholders, together with marketers, and say, where else can we sort of remove the burden so that cooking gas can get to customers more reliably and at an affordable price?
You know, if we're still talking about the LPG demand and supply in the country, I want to hear from you, your perspective. You are the president of the Gas Association in Nigeria. You are the managing director of, a foremost company in Nigeria, Shell Nigeria Gas Limited. How much LPG demand do we really have in the country? Because I was taking a look at the statistics of how many Nigerian families, for example, have cooking gas cylinders. We don't have up to 10 million, or about, it's not even up to that, you know. So how much demand do we have in Nigeria? And if we want to encourage new investment in that sector.
I think the landmark has been that we've crossed the annually, which the Nigerian LPG Association sort of.
Mr. Ubong, are you there? Okay. Okay. I guess the picture froze there. Let's see if we can take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Mr. Ubong, who is the President Nigerian Gas Association. We'll be right back. You can begin to send your comments as well as your opinions on what. Okay, my director is saying he's back. Mr. Ubong, sorry for that. That's what technology can do. We've got to live with it now. So I was actually asking the question around what's the LPG demand in the country? And can you juxtapose the demand that we have in the country to the new investment that is expected to come in due to the PIA, which will come into, which we'll discuss in a bit?
The best way to put it is to say that Nigeria has celebrated.
Oh, okay. It's still freezing. Let's see if we can take a break. Let's see if we can take a break. And when we return, we'll continue the conversation. Please join us on all our socials. We'll be right back. ED Ubong, the Managing Director of Shell Nigeria Gas Limited, and the President Nigerian Gas Association, is still with me. We're trying to wriggle out of this network challenges. Mr. Ubong, good to have you back. So let me allow you to land. I guess you heard my question earlier, so you wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, so Nancy, what I was saying was, I mean, we're looking at what the sort of core numbers are. The LPG Association has indicated that from a consumption perspective, we've crossed the 1 million tons per annum mark in terms of LPG consumption, but everybody's of the view that we need to get to 10 million tons per annum over the next 5 years. So the demand is strong because cooking gas is a mass product required by millions of Nigerians. We then just need to walk the various parts of the value chain from the supply bit to the distribution bit and the marketing bit to ensure that we get those volumes to the end customers more regularly and at an affordable price.
Let's talk about the almighty PIA passed and the gas implications for it. The Nigerian Gas Association came out with a communique, I think sometime in December. I saw that. There were a lot of issues that you raised as an association as the PIA concerns you, also some gains and benefit. I would really like to ask if this PIA framework is really the right platform that will leverage and utilize gas as a transition fuel for us, because I was looking also at the data. Nigeria is one of the top 10 gas producers in the world, yes, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So this PIA, is it the right framework?
Thank you, Nancy. So Nancy, the PIA is the law, and I think it's a significant improvement on where we were over the past 10 years. Significant indications in the PIA that it wants gas investments in Nigeria to get better. There are still a few areas where we need to work with various stakeholders to get clarification on how it's going to be implemented. But I think the key positive is that we have seen the government move very aggressively in terms of putting in place the structures that would drive the PIA implementation. As the Nigerian Gas Association, we stand ready to continuously engage with this body so that whatever we're putting in place following the PIA would lead to this accelerated gas development that we're all looking forward to.
What kind of investments do you think that this PIA would unlock in the domestic gas sector and across the value chain? And perhaps if you have like a timeline, since the president signed it last year, one law that has really been a bottleneck for us for the past 2 decades.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I think one of the key bits is the royalty structure around gas has been very clearly separated from oil. So that would allow investors to make a clear view whether they're doing a gas investment or oil investment. There's a whole lot more focus on sort of separating upstream from midstream and downstream, which would allow investors to then decide where they want to play in the value chain, whether they want to be upstream producers, whether they want to act in the midstream, or whether they want to play in the downstream. That segregation of the sectoral value is very important because it allows people to focus and develop whichever sector that they want to play in. We are excited that gas finally has a regulatory agency where you have seen the DPR now broken down into the upstream agency and the midstream and downstream agency. What that then means is that we are now on a firm path to put in place gas regulations that would support the decade of gas, which has already been declared by the president, and we hope that is then going to continue over the next decade, where we have clear regulations that provide confidence for investors, clear ways of carrying licensing, open access in various areas, and different incentives, especially around where we have people who can construct pipelines and then they're able to sort of get tax rebates when those lines are built. These are some of the examples and pointers, of course, in the PIA that give investors confidence that if we work the implementation part properly, this could actually help us unlock the Nigerian gas industry.
Do you still see new investments coming into the gas sector, especially as the structural challenges still abound, not just even for the gas market, but for even other markets across the country? So what kind of new investment are you expecting despite the structural challenges that are still inherent there?
So thanks, Nancy. I think you are spot on about the global sentiments around gas and how that would sort of impact us from the investor perspective. But I think as Nigeria, we have taken this as a transition fuel. We need to do the required advocacy work to sort of ensure that it becomes clear that we cannot stand still. We cannot abandon the significant volumes of gas that we have on the ground. We must use gas to transition and provide us the development targets that we have set for ourselves, even as MDGs. And I think it's how we manage that conversation. A combination of advocacy on one hand, a combination of real active steps on the ground, like what we've spoken about, the tax incentives, engagement with various parastatals that would encourage investors to sort of take the risk and sort of come in and put in place new infrastructure and drill more and new wells to sort of get gas to the surface. We are not there yet, and I think it's going to be a combination of working on one hand with international agencies who we know are the main financiers, and are also the local authorities who have to indicate that the environment is right and the right structures are in place to support any new investor. Luckily, of course, we also have people who are already playing in the Nigerian gas space, local players like Azela, Falcon, Shell Nigeria Gas in the IO space, Chevron, SPDC, upstream, who have also remained significant gas producers together with Seplat and other players. They've not necessarily taken their foot off gas, and in every message they have sort of passed over the past year, they've sort of said they want to do more gas projects in country.
Okay, the last 2 minutes, just respond to the issue of pricing, because gas stakeholders such as you have an issue with pricing being deemed to be regulated until a transition is done to a free market. In your communique, you actually said that the PIA needs to be more specific about time-bound triggers. What kind of triggers are you talking about there? Then I would also like you to talk about the licensing, which your communique also expatiated on. So the last 2 minutes. And what's your outlook for gas this year? Really, even though we have seemingly positive things, but we do know that the challenges are there, the challenges of taxes, which you've talked about, FX differentials are also there, and some also bottlenecks.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. And I think maybe the issue of pricing is it's a key. One of the biggest incentives for investors has always been moving into a market that is willing buyer and willing seller, which we sort of say is deregulated across all the value chain. We also understand that the government, for various reasons, would want to regulate certain segments of that market. But what we as the association is seeking is a clear time-bound transition. Our view is that this transition can happen by 2023, where we sort of move to a purely market-driven pricing structure, which is willing buyer, willing seller. But we continue to engage the government to understand their own worries and also engage investors on one hand, and then we seek where the middle ground could be. And I think that conversation needs to continue, like we said in our communique. What is that transition timeline that we all need to work to? We are proposing 2023, and we will continue to sort of take that up with the new midstream and downstream regulator to see if that can be locked into some sort of regulation so that everybody knows what they need to work towards in that sort of aspect. I think the other bit is you also asked the question around the gas outlook. I
Yes.
think it's been a tough last quarter of the year over the past 3 months where we've had significant security challenges, lots of sabotage on gas supply lines. I mean, we sort of, and you've sort of seen that also affect the electricity supply. It has affected gas industries and the manufacturing index. We're sort of then sort of hoping that this year we sort of take a more active step in addressing some of the security challenges that would allow gas to flow to all the customers. And we then also continue to work, especially with the private sector, to ensure that the goals of the PIA are fully embedded in the first quarter of the year so that this market can begin to grow.
I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Ubong, for joining us today. Let's talk sometime again soon, perhaps sometime in the year, and see how far and see how the PIA framework would help utilize this sector, because we have more gas than crude, as it were, and the whole world is transitioning into cleaner energy. We have quite a lot to talk about. We've not even delved into gas flaring, but we'll do that sometime. I've been speaking with Ed Ubong, who is the Managing Director, Shell Nigeria Gas Limited. He's also the President, Nigerian Gas Association. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. I hope you all have been informed, enlightened, and educated. Please join us again tomorrow, same time I will be here. You will see my face again. Connect with us on social media. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and be that change that you want to see. Bye now.